Hi there and welcome to Foodie Friday on Viking.TV. I'm Karen Burns-Booth and today I'm going to welcome you to my home where we're going to be cooking and enjoying afternoon tea. Today I'm going to be serving freshly made scones with jam and cream, clotted cream of course, and a variety of sandwiches from smoked salmon and cream cheese right the way through to the quintessential cucumber sandwich, and a variety of cakes, chocolate, lemon drizzle fairy cakes and other little treats I'm going to actually show you how to make, and then we're all going to enjoy it together later on with, of course, that very important pot of tea. So welcome. Okay, we're just going to start off by making the fairy cakes, and I've just been through to the pantry to get a few ingredients. It's basically a Victoria sandwich, which is the name for a Victoria sponge, as lots of people know it as. But rather than creaming the butter and the sugar together as you normally would, you put everything in a bowl and you use a hand whisk to whisk it all up. And it's a little bit of a cheat, but even Mary Berry has a recipe for an all-in-one sandwich sponge, which is what we're going to be making. And I'm going to be making 12 of them, and it's going to be vanilla flavoured. So first of all, I've got my sugar and flour already weighed out in here. And now all I have to add is some butter, which I'm going to weigh. And I will be sharing the recipes on Viking.TV for you. So I've got one of these fantastic scales where you just sort of like tear it back to the beginning, and I can add my butter, which is 90 grams. Try to use a good unsalted butter. Add your butter first. I'm going to be adding some milk, and you can make, for a bit of a variation, you can use buttermilk as well. I quite like buttermilk in baking. It gives a lightness and airiness that really sort of adds to different flavours and sort of textures. So we've got the butter in there. Now I'm going to be adding 180 mils of milk. So just measure out the 180 mils before I add the eggs. So just 180. If it's a little bit too dry, you can always add more milk, so don't be scared about that. And I can take this off the scales now because I've measured my butter out. And then 3 free range eggs. I always use free range. So I'll just crack the eggs into the jug here, and then we'll whisk them before we add them. And then it's just a case of actually blending the whole of the cake together with a hand whisk. So it's really simple. It still tastes good. You can still do it the old-fashioned way if you like. And then, as I said, it was going to be vanilla flavoured. I've got some vanilla extract, which is different to vanilla essence, by the way, which is artificial. This is actually proper vanilla extract. So I'll mix that in with the eggs. About 2 teaspoons. You could measure it if you like. We quite like it vanilla-y in this house. And whisk up your eggs so you have a nice loose consistency. And then simply just pour that in to the mixture, to all of the ingredients that I've measured already. And here comes the mixing bit. Just put your hand mixer in and start off slowly. You don't want it splattering all over. Just to get the butter amalgamated with the flour, sugar, eggs and milk. It smells delicious already. I can really smell the vanilla in there. It's all nicely amalgamated now, so I'm going to bang it right up to top speed. And you really want to be beating for 1 to 2 minutes. You're beating lots of air basically into the cake mixture. Because you want your fairy cakes light and airy so they can fly away. I'm sorry about that, but I do like a baking pun. So this is the kind of consistency you're looking for. It's like very, very thick cream, not quite pouring. You can dollop it. So that's about done by now. So just reduce your speed so you don't have cake splattering all over the kitchen, which I have done in the past. I've actually pebble dashed the kitchen. And here we have dead easy, all-in-one mixture for the fairy cakes. So what I'm going to do next is you'll need what's commonly known as a muffin pan now, but we used to call it a bun tin. This is a little bit deep actually, because they actually are fairy cakes, not muffins, but it'll do. And you need cake cases, which you can buy from all supermarkets and specialist baking shops. So I'm just going to line the pan here with the cake cases, and we're going to be making a dozen today. If there's any left over, then that's always a bonus, but this mixture usually makes 12. And the fairy cakes, they are sort of fallen out of favour really, because people now sort of like, use the expression cupcake, but I always think a cupcake is bigger and has more sort of buttercream loaded on the top. These are dainty, elegant little cakes, the kind of cakes you might have seen at your children's birthday party, and I am going to decorate them quite traditionally, not too fancy. So I'm actually going to use a lemon icing later, which I'm actually going to squeeze the lemon here to make a lemon drizzle icing, and I'm also going to use hundreds and thousands, which I think is a little bit of fun. It's the kind of thing, like I said, when when you were a child, you used to do. So we're going to spoon the cake mixture in now. It's absolutely beautifully creamy, and if you can see that, it's just the right texture. So easy. All you have to do is just measure out your ingredients and just pop them in and get a hand mixer. So it's quite messy. You might, if you do get any that falls over the edge of the cake case, do try to wipe it up before you bake it. Otherwise, you're going to get like I've just done. But just run around, run your finger around afterwards, and we fill it about 3/4 full. I have to go around and clean the pan afterwards. And just carry on until you've finished all the cake mixture up. I might have made slightly too much today, but that's all right, because it means we'll get more than a dozen cakes. Just continue until you've used all the cake mixture up, or most of it. You can always go around and top it up afterwards as well if you've been a little bit sort of mean on some of the cake cases here. And fairy cakes, you can also make butterfly cakes. And they are the ones where you cut the top off, and then with the piece of cake you have cut off the top, in the little hollow you fill it with buttercream, and then you cut the top into 2 pieces and you make wings. And I remember those from my childhood. They were another birthday party kind of cake. So here we are, just keep going around. There's no easy way to do this. If a cake has got a firmer texture, I sometimes use an ice cream scoop, which is a good tip. But it wouldn't work with this because it's quite a loose mixture. Once I've filled all of these up and wiped away all of the excess on my muffin tin, I'm going to be baking these in a preheated oven at 180°C, which is 350 Fahrenheit, or 160 fan. And I'm actually baking them fan today. Because it's the best setting on my cooker, so it's up to you. I have baked these in an agar before as well. It's a bit of hit and miss, but you'll know your own agar. So it's basically what they call a moderately cool oven. Right, I might go around some of these because I've been a bit mean with some of them. So don't want meagre fairy cakes, we want quite plumptious ones. Here we are. You can make them bigger if you want to make bigger fairy cakes, but because we're doing afternoon tea today and I want everything to be dainty and elegant, I don't really want big cakes. I've got a selection of cakes today. I have made some little mini chocolate fancies already, which I've decorated with a salted butterscotch icing. And I've also, I'm going to make some fresh scones. I've made some fruit scones already, but I'm going to make some what we call plain scones, which don't have any fruit in, so that my guests, when they arrive later on, can decide which scones they like. All going to be served with clotted cream and jam, and also lemon curd, because I quite like lemon curd. Right, so I'm just going to go around and wipe all of the excess off, and then I'm going to bob them in the oven. Okay, so whilst the fairy cake's in the oven, and they take between 10 and 12 minutes, so check them after about 8 to 9 minutes, make sure that we don't want them burnt. I'm going to make the lemon drizzle icing. So I've sieved into this little bowl here 115 grams of icing sugar, and I've got 1 lemon. And a little trick, because I actually have just moved house and I can't find my lemon squeezer, is you don't want pips in it. So cut the lemon in half and squeeze it through a sieve so that it's going to catch all of the pips in there, and you're not going to get pips in your lemon drizzle icing. So you need a nice juicy large lemon. If there's not enough at the end, but I do want a thickish lemon drizzle icing, then just grab another lemon basically and just keep adding the juice, but normally 1 large lemon will do it. It's amazing how sort of like thirsty icing sugar can be. So let's see how that is. There's actually no pips in there actually. So I'm just going to stir it in. Probably need a bit more juice, but it is coming together. If you can see, it's coming together. Like I said, I don't want a thin drizzle, I want quite a thick, and I think this is probably going to be all right. I'll just squeeze a bit more in. It doesn't appear that there's any pips in here, so a little bit more in there. So quite like the tanginess next to the lovely velvety, buttery vanilla, and that's absolutely spot on. That's the kind of consistency you want, a soft dropping consistency. And of course, once you put it on the cakes, it'll harden or set into a sort of semi-hard topping. And the great thing about something like this is just don't be scared. If you've made it too runny, just add more icing sugar. If you haven't added enough lemon juice, add a bit more. It's a very easy way of doing it. You could add food colouring if you like, but I quite like that sort of slightly off cream colour. So we'll just bob that to one side now until the fairy cakes come out, and obviously once they're cooled, and I'm going to sit them on a wire tray, then we'll decorate them and add the hundreds and thousands like I said before. Okay, so now we're going to make the scones, and it always makes me laugh. There's a real controversy over the name scone or scone. I've always said scone, but scone's equally okay, there's nothing wrong with that. I've already sifted and measured out my flour, self-raising flour, and there's also 2 teaspoons of baking soda in there as well, so baking powder. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to add the butter. Now, scones are what we call in the trade quick breads. So they are non-yeasted style of bread. So the Americans will have biscuits and we have scones. So I'm now going to, with the tips of my fingers, just rub this butter into the pre-sifted flour. There's a little bit of a smidging of salt in there as well. Okay, so I'm just going to rub the butter in with my fingertips, and they always say that cool hands make good pastry chefs, and my mum was an amazing pastry chef, and scones are part of the pastry genre of baking. So what I'm doing is I'm just rubbing the butter in with the tips of my fingers until it looks almost like breadcrumbs, and it takes a little bit of, and just keep sort of like cleaning off your buttery fingers as well. Scones are, like I said, part of the quick bread family. Another well-known part of the quick bread family is obviously soda bread, Irish soda bread. Anything that isn't yeast leavened is a quick bread. So easy to make. You can have them on the table in half an hour. And it is thought that they made their way to afternoon teas after the 7th Duchess of Bedford, who started the afternoon tea idea off, mainly because she had to wait till 8 or 9 o'clock in the evening for a dinner and had a sinking feeling, as she said, about 2 or 3 in the afternoon. She started off with just a cup of tea and a piece of bread and butter, it is quoted, but soon started asking her chefs to actually bring sort of dainty cakes and scones up to her room, and eventually to the parlour where she invited all her lady friends. And scones are really what I would call, as well as the sandwiches and cakes, as the mainstay of an afternoon tea. So I've now rubbed all the butter in, and as you can see, I've got a lovely fine sort of breadcrumb kind of texture, changed colour slightly. And I'm now going to add my milk and beaten egg. Now there's some controversy about adding egg to scones. I always add egg to my scones because I don't particularly like the sensation that baking powder gives to your mouth when you actually raise scones with baking powder. It has a slightly acerbic kind of feeling to the mouth. So for this amount of mixture in here, and I will actually share the recipe on Viking.TV later, we're going to add 2 eggs, and we're going to add 350 mils of milk. But I have to say that buttermilk is actually better for scones than milk. It makes amazing scones, very, very light. So I'm just beating the eggs, and I'm going to make a well in the middle of my scone mixture. Add the egg, and then I'm going to measure out the milk to 350 mils. I always put the milk in after the egg, so it actually gets a residual egg mixture in there. It's probably quite frugal. So measure out the milk to 350, but never ever with scones put it all in. Just keep adding it gradually, because sometimes it gets too wet. It's just one of those things. It's like the scone fairy sometimes decides what is too much milk and what isn't enough milk, and many times I've had too wet a dough. I was always taught never ever stir scone mixture with a fork or a spoon, always a blunt-edged knife. So when it gets to this stage where all the dry ingredients have amalgamated with the egg and milk mixture, we now need to actually put it onto our work surface here and start shaping it. And you will need some flour to make sure it doesn't stick. So just sprinkle a little bit of flour on there, like so. Tip it out, and that's just about the right consistency that I want. It's, like I said, scone mixture should never be dry, but it should be malleable so you can actually shape it. The whole point is you're going to cut or stamp your scones out. And then with floured hands, turn it around so you can actually start cutting your scones out. Make sure you've got your baking tray ready, lined, as you saw me earlier on, put it down. And don't never ever overhandle a scone mixture. It should be just brought together, and then I don't even use a rolling pin. I just pat it down with my hands. The less you can sort of manipulate it, the less you handle it, the better your scones are going to be. So we want nice big tall scones, so you need to pat it out to about 1 inch, which is 2.5 centimetres. And then dip your scone cutter into some flour. I find it helps. Never twist a scone because it'll stop it rising. Just ease it out and pop it onto your baking tray. And just carry on like that until you've actually finished. So pull it away, never twist it. Just let it drop out of the mould, the cutter, and bob it onto the tray like so. So this mixture that I'm making will yield between 8 and 10 scones. It's about, like I said, Scone Fairy has a lot to answer for. So it's just the right consistency. It's just a little bit sticky, but it's malleable, so I can actually shape it. I never mind if the scones are too close together on a baking tray. They're going to rise beautifully anyway. But the trick really is not to twist, because by twisting, you're actually stopping the scone rising, and it's absolutely true. I once wrote an article for a very famous clotted cream company in the UK, and they wanted me to share my tips about scone making and afternoon tea, and apparently that was the one tip that they were all fascinated in, is never twist your cutter. So there you go. So I've already made some fruit scones, but I've deliberately decided to demonstrate how to make the scone mixture here with what we call plain scones, because some people don't like the dried fruit in scones. So it's always nice to be able to offer a selection. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I've got 8 here. I'll probably get about 10, like as I said, out of here, maybe even one more. So as it gets towards the end and it gets a bit sticky, you might need to go and wash your hands, which I'm just going to do that now, and then I'll come back and reshape that and show you what I do with the cut-offs. Reflour your board a bit, and with the trimmings, just bring them together very gently again. As I said, never overwork the dough. Pat it out. Make sure they're sort of they're together, not going to sort of fall apart. There we are. And probably going to get nearly a dozen out of here actually. So I'll just move things around on the baking paper. So just continue until you've used all of your dough up basically. There we are. Right, so what I'm going to do now, there's not enough room for this little one on there, so I'm actually going to leave that to one side. I can bake it again afterwards. Just going to, with the residual milk and egg I've got, I'm just going to glaze the top of them before they go in the oven with a pastry brush. Just gives a nice sheen on the top and helps. You can at this stage as well, and some people actually sprinkle sugar on. I'm not going to bother because they're going to be filled with jam and cream later, so I don't think we need the sugar on top. But just glaze them with a bit of milk. It's just using it up. And there we are. So now we're ready for those to go in the oven. So here we are, the fairy cakes are out of the oven and they've been cooling for about an hour, so they're ready to ice with the lemon drizzle icing. So I'm not going to be sort of too highfalutin, as they say about this. You can go, you know, completely berserk and you can pipe buttercream on there, but I've already done that for some little mini chocolate fancies I made earlier. I'm actually simply just going to get this gorgeous lemon drizzle icing that you saw me making earlier, which has just gone nice and thick now. Be aware it will drizzle over the side, hence the word lemon drizzle. And we're just going to take teaspoons of it and just smooth it over the top like so. It's a little bit of a messy business, but it does dry semi-hard. But before it dries, we're going to do the pièce de résistance, as they say down our way, is to sprinkle it with a few hundreds and thousands. And I think that's just such fun. And it just reminds me of childhood to birthday parties. It looks really pretty against the icing as well. Right, so I'm about to start making my sandwiches now. And I just want to explain about the bread I've picked. I picked a crustless bread because, well, I mean, you can actually buy a loaf of bread which has crusts on, cut them off, and then you can use them for breadcrumbs, put it in the freezer. But you can buy crustless bread, and it's really, really handy for afternoon tea because the sandwiches are supposed to be dainty and not sort of like Trencherman sandwiches. Having said that, afternoon teas come in all guises. I mean, I've been to a chocolate afternoon tea where everything was completely chocolate. So if you wanted to cater to, you know, sort of men at afternoon tea, and why not, because they like it as well, and you feel that something a bit sort of heftier is in order, then by all means use a really good sliced bread that does have crust on it. But I've actually opted to go for best of both, which is a bit of wholemeal and a bit of white, because I think it covers all sort of like bases there. I'm going to do a beautiful ham and cheese sandwich, and I've opted for, mainly for aesthetics, I've opted for ready sliced cheese. There are beautiful cheeses out there, and I'm a cheese lover. You don't have to go for ready sliced, but it just makes for a nice neat sandwich. And I've got some smoked ham here, and I'm going to pair that with some chutney in one sandwich. And then, as I discussed earlier on, we're going to go for the quintessential afternoon tea sandwich of cucumber, which I'm going to slice thinly. And the third sandwich I'm going to make today is going to be smoked salmon and cream cheese. And that gives a nice variation. We've got a vegetarian sandwich, we've got a nice sort of cheese and ham, and we've got a sandwich which would be suitable for a pescatarian as well, which is a smoked salmon. And it's always essential to have at least 3 varieties of sandwich on your afternoon tea. Even 4 would be nice. So maybe had I had more time today, I might have done an egg and cress, which is a traditional filling for sandwiches in the UK. You can do pâté with cornichons, gherkins. You can do cold roast beef, obviously cold roast chicken. I mean, chicken and stuffing is lovely, but the whole emphasis is of these sandwiches, they should be dainty. So that's the fillings I'm going to be doing today, which will go along with the fruit and plain scones, the chocolate fancies chocolate cake, and the fairy cakes that I've made earlier on. Right, so I'm just about to set up the tea time table, and I brought one of my favourite teapots in, and you can see it matches some of the cake stands we've got here. It's a Windsor by Ridgway, and it's beautiful. Also, I'm going to be serving things off Mason's Indian tree, which is my grandmother's. But I'd like to come back and talk about tea. So I know that we are a culture now putting tea bags in mugs and cups, but I still like to make my tea in a pot, even if it's just not for afternoon tea, but for breakfast and what have you. And the tea I'm serving today is a pretty generic one. It is an afternoon tea, and it is a bag. I do like loose tea as well, but it's what I have to hand. Other favourite teas for the afternoon would be Assam, Lapsang Souchong, which is a smoky tea, or a Darjeeling, but there are many, many other teas. And of course, the quintessential Earl Grey, which lots of people like, with the bergamot flavour in it. But today it's going to be a standard afternoon tea, but a very good quality one. So I'm going to go back now and start setting up, and we'll get all of the afternoon tea bits and pieces on the table. Right, so here we have it, afternoon tea. I'm just going to go and grab my friends and ask them to come through and enjoy this with me. Thank you ever so much for watching, and I'll see you soon.